the big headline is California's Senate Bill 553 is now fully enforceable. We're 1 year out from its implementation. So this started, really went into effect July 1 of 2024. And it requires employers to implement a written plan, conduct annual training, and then maintain records of violent incidents and anything that might happen in the workplace. And it's not just for your high-risk industries. It's really for just about every employer in California. So the big headline I would say for 2025 is, now that we're at the 1 year anniversary of this Senate bill going into effect, it's time to retrain your workforce, and training is required every year. This newish law, I guess I should say, since it's been around for about a year now, it really pushes compliance more into the realm of, I would say, culture and accountability. This is really an effort to include all employees and not just the managers. And so the idea is to really get their input and understanding about risks that they might see in the workplace. So you can't just really, buy a training video and walk away. You really need to involve your employees in risk assessment. You need to tailor your training to real scenarios they might face, and make sure that everyone, from your front desk people to senior leadership, that they all know what the plan is and what to do if something should go wrong. I think a lot of people, when they think about workplace violence, they think about, physical fights in the workplace or an active shooter scene, and those certainly are part of workplace violence. But there's also, things that are a little bit more subtle, things like verbal threats, intimidation, stalking, or even domestic violence that might spill into the workplace. And so employers need to think through those various scenarios and risks for their workplace and provide a plan and training around those. Another common thing I do hear from prospects is, hey, we're in a quiet office setting, we're not at risk. And as I mentioned above, coworker or personal relationship related violence can happen in quiet offices. It can happen in quiet offices, and the employer needs to be prepared with how to respond to those. So if there's a scenario in a workplace where someone in leadership is perhaps the one that's instigating the workplace violence, it's a good practice to have another route for the employees to reach out to. And it could be something like, say, in a nonprofit environment. Sometimes the board is involved in something like that for escalation. If you do or don't have an HR department, maybe you want to consider having an outsourced HR provider to go to, because they can be that independent ear for employees to come to and voice concerns, particularly if it's a situation where there may be a direct reporting relationship between a manager and a subordinate. That can be pretty awkward to try to resolve internally. In order to have an effective program, it's in a plan related to workplace violence, it's important to have the right protocols in place. So there may be a chain of command in terms of who's responsible for the plan, and maybe it's not just one name. Maybe it's a couple different people in the organization that can react quickly. It should be people that are on site, ideally, that don't need to be called via phone call or something like that. But it's also even putting some responsibility in your frontline staff. So your frontline staff may not even have time to call a manager for help. They should have the skills and a plan of action in terms of how to react in the event there is an incident in the workplace. When we're creating a plan for an employer, we want not only to interact with the management of the organization, but also get that input from the employee side to really identify, are there any specific risks unique to this organization, unique to this work site, that really need to be thought through. And the more that an employer has, sort of different data points that they're getting this information from, the more comprehensive their plan is going to be.